Good evening, everybody. Hi. Welcome. I'm delighted to see so many people here. My name is Tony Davis. For those of you who don't know me, this year I'm president of the board of Friends of Hannon Library, and we're happy to see such a big turnout. I want to say just a couple of words about Friends of Hannon Library, which has as a goal to enrich the collections of the university library, and also, of course, to present public programs like these that pertain to literary life and issues that concern libraries. We have a series of events that occurs monthly during the academic year. Our funds also aid in important acquisitions that the library has acquired over the years, including a couple of rare Shakespeare folios, and more recently, the library has acquired some high quality facsimiles of a Gutenberg Bible and the Doomsday Book. So you'll want to check those out. And if you want to check those and other materials out, you can, like so many people here, become a member of Friends of Hannon Library. And there are forms over there. You may want to take advantage of our beginning of the year special because we anticipate raising dues a little bit this year. But right now you can join for $45 a year individual or $65 for a couple. And I'm happy to collect forms that you fill out, or you can leave them at the circulation desk, or you can go to sou.hanlib.edu, hanlib.sou.edu. Please join the Friends. We are, thanks to a recent sizable donation, working on establishing an endowment that will enable us to provide a greater variety and more in-depth sort of programming. We look forward to seeing you at more of these events. At this time, I'd like to call up Roy Scarborough, past president of the board, who will read the SOU land acknowledgement, followed by a brief but pertinent poem. Thank you, Roy.
Thank you.
Yep.
We always do this. Oh, is it working? Okay, that's the land acknowledgement is always read.
I think it is.
People are not hearing you in the back.
Oh,
Is there a switch on?
yeah, there it is.
There,
Better? Yeah. Can you hear now?
There we go. All right.
Yeah.
I'm Roy Scarborough, one of the board members, and we always read the land acknowledgement at SOU public events. I'm going to follow it with a poem that William Stafford wrote in 1957, that speaks directly to it. So here's the official acknowledgement. The Friends of the Hannon Library like to take this moment to acknowledge that Southern Oregon University is located within the ancestral homelands of the Shasta, Tacoma, and Lagawa peoples who lived here since time immemorial. These tribes were displaced during the rapid Euro-European colonization, the gold rush, and armed conflict between 1851 and 1856. In the 1850s, discovery of gold and settlement brought thousands of Euro-Americans to their lands, leading to warfare, epidemics, starvation, and villages being burned. In 1853, the first of several of these treaties were signed, confederating these tribes and others together, who would be referred to as the Rogue River tribes. These treaties ceded most of the homelands to the United States, and in return, they were guaranteed a permanent homeland reserved for them. At the end of the Rogue River Wars in 1856, these tribes and many other tribes from Western Oregon were removed to the Siletz Reservation and the Grand Ronde Reservation. Today, the Confederated Tribes of the Grand Ronde Community and Oregon and Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians are living descendants of the Tacoma, Shasta, and Lagawas people of this area. The Friends of the Hannon Library encourage you to learn about the land you reside and to join us in advocating for the inherent sovereignty of Indigenous people. And to that end, William Stafford probably came down along the shores of the Klamath River in the 1950s and came up with these lines. At the Klamath Berry Festival, the war chief danced the old way. The eagle wing he held before his mouth. And when he turned, the boom, boom stopped. He took 2 steps. A sociologist was there. The scout troop danced. I envied him the places where he had not been. The boom began again. Outside, he heard the stick game and the Blackfoot gamblers arguing at poker under lanterns. Still moccasined and bashful, holding the eagle wing before his mouth, listening and listening, he danced after the others stopped. He took 2 steps. The boom caught up. The mountain rose, and the still deep river slid but never broke its quiet. I looked back when I left. He took 2 steps. He took 2 steps past the sociologist. There's some remarkable things in that poem. You might want to, if you ever want to unpack it. It shifts and change of view and a very unreliable speaker. Not me.
But not you. Thank you, Roy. A couple of other very quick things. First of all, I would really like to thank the library staff, Emily Miller Francisco, the interim dean of the library, and her associates, Tom Dodson, Michael Brinkerhoff, and Gretchen Wilkie, were instrumental and put in a lot of time and effort in organizing this, as they do for all of our events. And we really appreciate that. And now I would like to introduce the MC for the evening, Amy Miller, who is the author of several books of poetry, the most recent of which is called Astronauts. That was a finalist for the Oregon Book Award. She works as a communications editor for the Oregon Shakespeare Festival. She's also the poetry editor for the Jefferson Journal. It's published by JPR, and a senior reader for the Beloit Poetry Journal, and of course, for several years running, the MC for this event. So I'm going to turn things over to her at this point. Welcome. Thank you.
Thank you, Tony, for that introduction. I'm going to do a sound check right now. We're going to, let's see, I'm kind of doing it for the benefit of the readers to come. Everybody okay out there? Can you hear all right? You're good here. People on Zoom, do you want to put your thumbs up or something? You're good there? Okay, great. We got a separate mic for you. So I think if you stand in between them speakers, that's what you want to do. Okay. I wanted to just start by saying thank you for coming out during this just unbelievably difficult week. It's been a really, really bad week. I am certainly glad, as I think a lot of you are, to be here in a room talking about somebody like William Stafford, who in his plain-spoken manner had a lot to say about tyranny and a lot to say about state-sponsored violence. And I just want to thank you all for coming out to celebrate that and be here in the room together. It's a great thing we're doing. Okay, I wanted to make a shout out to Michael, our tech person, who is here in the room. I just wanted to specifically say there are a lot of things going on here you may not know. There's the Zoom component, there's the audio in the room, and he handles kind of everything wired here. So thank you so much. Wired and wireless. Thank you, Michael. I believe this event is being video recorded. Is that right? We're required to tell you that, to let you know. Let's see, and we do have audience members watching on Zoom. So hello to Zoom people. They're watching through this little camera right here. Thank you for coming too. So these annual William Stafford celebrations have been taking place all over Oregon since the mid-1990s. This is our 31st one here in the Hannon Library. That's a pretty great accomplishment. Vince Wixon, who is sitting here right now and will be speaking later on, was actually the original organizer along with his wife Patty of this event, and they hosted it for more than 20 years. Let's see. So these do honor these events, honor the birthday of William Stafford, which is January 17th. So we're kind of in the ballpark here.
If you want.
Yeah, that'd be more comfortable, I think, wouldn't it?
Hold on for a minute. Thank you. So if you don't get enough of this thing tonight, there are other William Stafford celebrations all over Oregon, and not just Oregon. So there's one happening in Milwaukee, just south of Portland. That one is actually this Sunday, and that's a pretty great event too. And they are doing it on Zoom or something, or YouTube or something like that. You can watch online. That's the Milwaukee Poetry Series if you want to check that out. No, I think it's Sunday.
If it's
Sunday
It
afternoon.
would have been yesterday, right? Isn't today the 8th?
Right, we are the 8th, but it's,
It's the 7th.
I think it's happening on Sunday. Anyway, Milwaukee Poetry Series, you can look them up online and find out if it's Saturday or Sunday.
Right, it's Friday.
There's also one in Lake Oswego, very appropriately, where William Stafford lived for a long time. There's one in Newport, there's one in Coos Bay. And I just found out about this, and this is why I'm saying this. There is one, Vince might know about this one, in Los Prietos, California,
Wow.
just outside of Santa Barbara. And the reason that it's there is because it takes place on the site of the former site of the Los Prietos Civilian Public Service Camp, where William Stafford served as a conscientious objector during World War II.
Whoa.
So the place is actually gone, I think. I think it's just bare land now, more or less, wild land. The celebration takes place in the afternoon. It's outside. It's at a day use area that, according to their website, has no address. So that's the one I want to go to next year. I always like to start this evening by talking a little bit about William Stafford. There are always a few people who haven't done this event before, or maybe they just moved to Oregon or don't know very much about him. So he taught at Lewis and Clark College in Portland, and at the age of 48, he published his first book of poetry, which was called Traveling Through the Dark. And of course, there's a poem by that name in that book that made him very, very famous, and that probably most of us studied in high school. And that book went on to win the National Book Award. His first book of poetry won the National Book Award. I love that. He went on to publish more than 65 books of poetry and prose, and he got a late start, right? He started at age 48. He was the U.S. Poet Laureate in 1970 and 71. And he served as the Oregon Poet Laureate for 15 years from 1975 to 1990. So he spent a lot of years on the road teaching workshops and giving talks and doing readings. He did this all over the world and a whole lot in the Northwest. He died more than 30 years ago, but his influence is still strongly felt in the world of Oregon literature, hence all of these celebrations every January. And he taught and knew at least a few people who are probably in this room tonight. There are always a few folks watching who knew him and took some classes from him. And I wanted to let you know that in that vein, tonight's event is dedicated to one of those students and friends of William Stafford's, Joan Peterson. There's a little word about her on the back of your program there. She passed away in November. Suddenly, but she had a great life. She had a long and beautiful life. Joan was a poet and an organizer. She founded the Applegate Poets group. I think there are a couple of members of that group here tonight. It is still active, and in fact, I saw them do a reading and a tribute to Joan just a couple of weeks ago. So they're still going strong. And I think, Seth, correct me if I'm wrong, did she found it about 20 years ago?
Yes.
Yes. So that group has been going on strong for a long time. She was a longtime teacher at Rogue Community College. She was a generous and kind workshopper of poetry, a horse lover, and she had an effortless encyclopedic knowledge of the plants and animals of this region. She was a self-taught naturalist. And she took a lot of classes and workshops from William Stafford. Like, she kind of followed him around for a few years, and she would laugh about that. Like, she kind of was bugging him and lurking quite a bit, stalking him, let's say, in that sense. And she rarely missed one of these events, and she was usually sitting right in the middle of the room there with her friends. So We love her. We miss her. Thank you, Joan, for all those great years. And thank you all again for being here to be part of this continuing legacy and celebration that we do every year. So the way it's going to work tonight, for those of you who have never done this before, we begin with 4 featured poets who will each read a poem by William Stafford and one of their own. Our 4 featured poets tonight are Bill Gholson, Lois Schlegel, Perii Owen, and Gary Lark. Gary, are you in the room? Gary is not here. He's driving in from Grants Pass, and I'm hoping that he will be here. And we'll keep our fingers crossed for that. After the featured poets, Vince Wixon will give a presentation about the crafting of a particular Stafford poem that I think you're going to find really, really interesting. And then we'll have a really special guest speaker zooming in from Kansas City, Steve Paul, who has written a biography of William Stafford that is in contract with Oregon State University Press, and it is scheduled to be published in 2027. And so he's going to talk about the making of that book with us tonight. For a lot of us, that will be our first time hearing about that. Then we'll have a little intermission, 10 or 15 minutes. And then after that, we'll have an open mic where everyone in the room, if you would like to, you are invited to read a poem by William Stafford. And if you want to sign up for the open mic, there's a sign-up sheet over there. I'm going to actually pass that around right now. Then at the very end, before we go home, we'll have a video provided by Vince Wixon of William Stafford reading some of his poems. And that will run about 15 minutes or so. You're welcome to stay and watch the video, or if you feel like you want to head home, that's fine too. So let's get going with our 4 featured poets. Our first featured poet is Bill Gholson. Bill is an emeritus professor of rhetoric and American literature right here at Southern Oregon University. In 2006, he contracted 3 deadly illnesses, but survived. He has spent the last 10 years writing poetry about the body, chronic illness, mental illness, and teaching. He lives in Ashland with his wife, Jane, and his dog, Walter. Please welcome Bill Gholson.
I'll stand over here. Can you hear me?
Right in the middle is good.
Okay. Thanks for the invitation, and thanks especially to Amy. I was supposed to be here last year, but I had a bit of a health scare, so I wasn't able to attend, so I appreciate being able to come back. Okay. The Stafford poem I'm reading is from this book. If you have that with you, if anyone does, it's on page 51, and it's called Aunt Mabel. And I'll just say a couple of things. You could say unlimited things about almost any of his poems. You read them the first time and they seem quite simple, but then you read them again and again, multiple readings, and they begin to blossom into many different directions. And the other thing that I really liked about this poem is that it's a narrative, but it's such a small, compact narrative. It's just a brilliant poem. Okay, Aunt Mabel. This town is haunted by some good deed that reappears like a country cousin or truth when language falters these days, trying to lie. Because Aunt Mabel, an old lady gone now, would have cost even strangers to give bright flowers away, quick as a striking snake. Its deeds like this have weakened me, shaken by intermittent trust, stricken with friendliness. Our senator talked like war, and Aunt Mabel said, he's a brilliant man, but he didn't elect him. Excuse me. He's a brilliant man, but he didn't elect him that much. We didn't elect him that much. I blew that, sorry. Everyone's resolve weakens toward evening, or in a flash, when a face melts, strangers, even reminded for an instant between menace and fear. There are Aunt Mabels all over the world, or the graves in the rain. Okay. And then this is my poem, if I can find it. And it's called Wyatt. Wyatt. On hot summer days in Southern Oregon, I often talk with my neighbor Wyatt in the cool of our separate porches. Wyatt is quite short, and I'm above average height, so we make quite a pair side by side after he climbs over the fence. Oops, sorry. As if it were an accomplishment. And we then take a seat on my porch. I become his audience when he begins his expostulations. Wyatt speaks in sentences only his mother and father can translate, but I listen to him just the same. He speaks in the heat of the afternoon in the hope I will one day join him in his child's engagement with the universe. I believe he has syntax, always looking to the sky, speaking with his stubby arms outstretched. Just yesterday, I swore he said, "It is a terrifying universe," to which I solemnly agreed. You feel in Wyatt's presence the advent of a horizon and the relevance of now. He holds his arms out and looks at the sky with each sentence as if he had already taken hold of the language and used it with a trusting and open heart. As if speaking to the sky and raising his arms kept the universe from unwinding, or it was his hugging of everything at once. As if he were making a choice, as if he were making sense and waiting for me to understand his fevered entry into our torrid language.
Thank you, Bill. Our next featured poet is Lois Schlegel. Lois lives, works, and writes on 7 acres in the Rogue Valley. She's published short stories in the Westwind Review, which is SOU's own literary journal, and Margin, Magical Realism, and she was nominated for the Pushcart Prize. Lois has published 3 books of poetry and a prose poetry memoir titled Storms, and she works as a mental health counselor. Please welcome Lois Schlegel.
Well, good evening, everybody. I am really honored to be here tonight. When I was asked to do this, I started thinking about what should I read? What should I read of William Stafford's work? What should I read of my own? And probably you might guess, because of my profession, one of the things that I'm drawn to is some of the more difficult subjects. And I actually use poetry with some of my clients. When there's a moment when nothing says it better than a poem. So I try. On tonight was, why do we write? Many of you are probably writers, many of you are poets. And William Stafford said, a writer is not so much someone who has something to say, as he is someone who has found a process that will bring about new things he would not have thought of if he had not started to say them. And isn't that true? A lot of times when we write, whether it's prose or poetry, we discover what we know, what we believe, what we feel. And so I really resonate with that statement. At the same time, I also write to try to create meaning and maybe even beauty out of the things I know too well, like pain and suffering and death, mental health struggles. And so for me, it's a duality of both writing to know, writing to learn what I know, and then writing about what I know to try to create something more. So this first poem, this has already been displayed tonight. I'm also reading from this book, Traveling Through the Dark. It's on page 10 if you're following along. Traveling through the dark, I found a deer dead on the edge of Wilson Road. It is usually best to roll them into the canyon. That road is narrow, to swerve might make more dead. By the glow of the taillight, I stumbled back of the car and stood by the heap. A doe, a recent killing. She had stiffened already, almost cold. I dragged her off. She was large in the belly. My fingers touching her side brought me the reason. Her side was warm. Her fawn lay there waiting. Alive, still, never to be born. Beside that mountain road, I hesitated. The car aimed its lower parking lots under the hood purred the steady engine. I stood in the glare of the warm exhaust turning red. Around our group, I could hear the wilderness listen. I thought hard for us all, my only swerving, then pushed her over the edge into the river. My poem that I want to read tonight is called Repetitive Work. And this was written at a time when I was struggling with, really wrestling with my son's mental illness and drug addiction. And I was trying to make sense of both my fear of his possible actual death and the psychic death that I was watching him go through as he became insane. Repetitive work. Already the grass around the edges has grown dry and brown. Already, though you are not yet dead, I have used a sharp, flat point shovel to cut out a long rectangle. I have set aside the sod, piled it, and sprayed it down with the hose, covered it with a tarp. I have dug this hole 1,000 times, shovel after shovel of heavy dirt. I have stood where your body will lay and thrown back my head to see the teal blue sky and the sun making its predictable way across an oak fringed above. I have looked down at the chestnut red below and wondered, how can the sun still, the dirt still, and my beloved son soon to die? Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lois. Our next featured poet is Perii Owen. So Perii is a former flight attendant, a former art dealer, and a former children's librarian, and the former children's librarian right here in Ashland. And I think a lot of people know her because of that. I knew about her long before I ever met her. She has loved every one of her careers. She also loves her family, her friends, dogs with floppy ears, the common good, and putting words together in just about any written form. Please welcome Perii Owen.
Kind of embarrassed me.
Hi, everybody. Amy, I am so happy to be here and I appreciate your inviting me so much. I am in the company of esteemed poets and I feel very honored. I also love the idea of being surrounded by so many people who love poetry. I don't know how many of you actually write it, but it's wonderful to see all of you here tonight. You know, I was lucky enough to hang out with William Stafford one night, just one memorable night in 1980. I was living in Ogden, Utah at the time, and he came to speak at Weber State University, where the students and the professors were holding a reception for him. He was often printed in their, or reprinted, I guess I should say, in their literary journal called the Weber Journal. It's still being printed today. And I don't know how I was invited to this event, but I was. And it was wonderful. I was awestruck. I was starstruck because he had been the poet laureate of the US. They didn't call it that then. I think they called it the literary counselor to Congress or something. But anyway, and it was in the period of time when he was the Oregon poet laureate. So I knew about his reputation. He seemed incredibly genuine, very soft-spoken, very serious, although I have been told he had quite a personality. But he also seemed so earnest, and I was intimidated by that. So that when the time came for students to speak to him, ask him questions, they were also academic in nature. They wanted to know about why he used a comma or a dash, and they wanted him to help them analyze their favorite poems. And I didn't want to know any about that stuff. I wanted to know what a day in the life in the world of William Stafford would be like. What did he eat for breakfast? Who did he hang out with? But I was so intimidated, I never asked those questions. But not surprisingly, I am somebody who writes about people mostly, and that was why I was curious about those he knew. The William Stafford poem I want to read to you tonight demonstrates his incredible gifts for finding the truths in our everyday lives. It's about life's journey and the inherent continuity in our lives. It's called The Way It Is. I see so many nodding heads. Of course, the book in which it was printed was entitled that. The poem was written on August 2nd, 1993, which was the very month William Stafford died so suddenly. It was published 5 years later. His son Kim was one of 3 editors. William Bly was the second one, and I don't remember the third one. You might know. I don't remember. Anyway, and then of course it's been reprinted, but this poem to me is just it. So here is William Stafford's The Way It Is. There's a thread you follow. It goes among things that change, but it doesn't change. People wonder about what you are pursuing. You have to explain about the thread, but it is hard for others to see. While you hold it, you can't get lost. Tragedies happen, people get hurt and die, and you suffer and get old. Nothing you do can stop time's unfolding. You don't ever let go of the thread. So beautiful. So I imagine that for those of you who write poetry, William Stafford has maybe inspired some of you to write your own verses. And I wrote this poem just the other day to accompany William Stafford's. You may see that it's connected, you may not, but anyway, it was what came out of me after sort of falling in love with that poem of his again. I call it Los Angeles, 1953. Deep in the city of angels, our house was made golden by that omnipresent Southern California light and the sun-drenched blooms surrounding it. Shades of lemon and butter, the roses, calla lilies, tulips, and hibiscus nurtured by my father said of our house, there is happiness and love here, and there was. Sunny yellow shutters were affixed beside the windows. A basket of yellow marguerite daisies hung on the front door, and my father's golden ingot ivy entwined our picket fence. The always sunny kitchen had wall covering of flowered paper as if to give me the feeling of an endless summer. And at age 5, I thought it was. It was where my mother baked meringue pies using the lemons of our trees and imbuing each sweet, tart bite with the essence of my sun-dappled afternoons. It was where my father scrambled Saturday morning eggs with golden bell peppers, pale yellow onions, and maize-colored corn as he taught me about the shades of yellow. And he embraced me in his love like a summer-caressed day. But even endless summers come to an end. The sun-drenched promise of our lives drew down, and the golden light receded, replaced by a gray fog. Years later, I learned the fog had always been there, that it had been waiting just beyond the hedges, not cruel, only honest. I also learned that I mistook my golden days for permanence, and I learned happiness was never the house, never the shutters, nor even the ivy taught to climb the fence. It was my father kneeling in the yard, his hands stained with golden dirt, believing love would grow if tended daily. And it was my mother measuring sweetness, somehow knowing tartness belonged in every recipe. The fog didn't erase those days. Fog forces focus. And in fact, it revealed what they were, not a promise of forever, but a lesson in attention. I carry all those yellows with me now, not as colors, but as a way of seeing. And sometimes when the world looks dark, I realize the surprise is this: the sunshine never left. It learned how to live inside me. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Perii. So I'm looking around. I don't think that Gary made it in tonight. He did email me yesterday and said that he was under the weather and he was a little bit iffy about tonight. So I will check on him later and make sure he's okay. So next up, we have a special appearance from Vince Wixon, who's going to be talking about one particular Stafford poem. If you don't know Vince, if you're one of the three people in the room who is not acquainted with Vince, he has published 4 collections of poems, most recently Laying By. He has co-edited 4 books by William Stafford, including 2 on writing for University of Michigan Press. Those are called Crossing Unmarked Snow and The Answers Are in the Mountains, as well as Sound of the Axe, Aphorisms and Poems for Pit Poetry. Aphorisms by William Stafford, by the way. He co-produced 2 videos on William Stafford, What the River Says and The Life of the Poem. In 2014, he and his wife Patty received the Stuart H. Holbrook Award for contributions to the literary life of Oregon. Please welcome Vince Wixon.
Thank you, Amy. Special guest who appears and talks every year. It's nice to see such a big crowd. Every year it's like that. It's wonderful. I'm going to talk about one poem this year, a poem I admire. But even talking about one poem, I imagine I can stretch it out and eat into Steve Paul's time. First, Mike is going to play a video of William Stafford reading the poem St. Matthew and all. Those in the room should have a copy. And there's a handout. And those of you listening at home, it's a phrase I've always wanted to say. If you have some Stafford books handy, St. Matthew and all is on page 228 of The Way It Is. Page 23 of Tim Stafford's Asked Me, the book that's been shown a couple times tonight. And it was first collected in an Oregon Message in 1987. That's also in Robert Bly's selected Stafford, The Darkness Around Us is Deep. This reading is from March 1987, the 50th reunion of Consultants in Poetry to the Library of Congress, which is now Poet Laureate, someone else said. Those of you who were here last year heard Stafford's entire reading that night. This is his final poem that night, which may show his regard for it. Mike? Hello?
I'll end with St. Matthew and all. Laureen, we thought she'd come home, but it got late, and then days. Now it has been years. Why shouldn't she if she wanted? I would. Something comes along, a sunny day, you start walking, you meet a person who says, "Follow me," and things lead on. Usually it wouldn't happen, but sometimes the neighbors notice your car is gone, the patch of oil in the driveway, and it fades. They forget. In the Bible, it happened. Fishermen, Levites, they just went away and kept going. Thomas, away off in India, never came back. But Lorene, it was a stranger maybe, and he said, "Your life, I need it," and nobody else did.
Thank you. Stafford told the story of this poem's origin a few times in his readings. In the mid-'80s, he was visiting his friend, poet Steve Dunning in Ann Arbor, and Steve called down the stairs, "Lorene won't be coming to the meeting."
Oh.
Stafford says about it, "I didn't know who Lorene was, but I liked the syllables. Just the name got me started, and pretty soon I'm away off in India." It reads so well, it seems to me. You follow the path of the speaker as the poem spins out. I'm looking at the poem as a reader who appreciates it, not a critic. As Stafford says, the activity of the reader is the life of the poem. You should leave things for the reader or hearer to do. The language is very simple, but there's great variety in the sentences. There are a number of turns and surprises. The speaker knows Lorene, at least to some extent. We thought she would come home, and years have passed. The movement is logical, at least logical in the way a mind might work. Why shouldn't she? If she wanted, I would. You start walking. That I would in you bends the poem toward the speaker and his own desires, or at least thoughts the speaker entertains, and it includes us as well. The attractive idea we have sometimes of just chucking it all. But so the poem is not all about Lorene. Follow me and things lead on. They certainly do in everyone's life. And this echo of Jesus in the books of Matthew and Mark, follow me and I will make you fishers of men, leads to the Israelites and the followers of Jesus, but not before we get more of the everyday details of the speaker thinking about leaving an ordinary life. The car gone, the patch of oil in the driveway, and it fades. I love that phrasing, and it fades. And now it's changed from walking to driving, notice. Then the fishermen, Levites, Thomas, away off in India, the fishermen who became disciples, wandered off to preach after Jesus' crucifixion and resurrection. According to what I read, the Bible doesn't tell how Jesus met Thomas, but he was known later for his missionary work in India especially. The Levites, I remember the term from my early years of Bible study in the Methodist Church in Tracy, Minnesota, but nothing else, so I looked it up. The Torah says the Levites were an Israelite tribe who wandered in the wilderness, descendants of Levi, a son of Jacob. So they were given sacred duties, but they were landless sojourners. So all of these people wandered with a purpose, it seems to me. No wonder the speaker thinks of them. It's odd that Matthew doesn't get a mention in the poem itself, isn't it? It's just the title. It didn't dawn on me till much later. He was a disciple, of course, and follow me is in the gospel attributed to him. But he wasn't called by Jesus from fishing, a tax collector, I read. But as did the others, Matthew went to other areas like Persia to spread the word. So the title spreads the poem further, I think. Is it all wanderers, maybe? But Lorene, the end of the poem finally gets back to her, as it should. Stafford once said, "A poem is your best remarks given an appearance of coherence." We hear the wistful sounds of her name again. Stafford also said, "Any syllable sounds more like another syllable than it sounds like silence." Well, he also announced at dinner parties, let's talk recklessly. So Lorraine, an ordinary person who apparently didn't have much of a life, it seems no one made much of an effort to look for her after she disappeared. And there's the speaker's astounding comment at the very end that nobody needed her. How's he know that? But in the poem, she's in the company of the saints, other wanderers who sacrificed, whose lives had meaning, a mission. Someone needed her and she went. Lorraine, we thought she'd come home, but it got late and then days. Now it has been years. Why shouldn't she if she wanted? I would. Something comes along, a sunny day, you start walking, you meet a person who says, follow me, and things lead on. Usually it wouldn't happen, but sometimes the neighbors notice your car is gone, the patch of oil in the driveway, and it fades. They forget. In the Bible, it happened. Fishermen, Levites, they just went away and kept going. Thomas, away off in India, never came back. But Lorraine, it was a stranger maybe. And he said, your life, I need it. And nobody else did. Thanks for listening.
Thank you, Vince. So next up is tonight's guest speaker, who is Steve Paul. Steve Paul was a newspaper book review editor when he first crossed paths with William Stafford in the late 1980s. 10 years ago, after Steve retired from a career in journalism, he began writing literary biographies, publishing The Slice of Life Hemingway at 18, followed by Literary Alchemist, The Writing Life of Evan S. Connell. 5 years ago, his focus turned to William Stafford, and his full-length biography is expected to be published in 2027 by Oregon State University Press. Steve lives in Kansas City, Missouri, where he's zooming in from tonight. So here is Steve Paul.
Greetings, and thank you so much, Amy, for having me here. Thank you to Vince. I can't say enough about Vince. You all know his generosity. He's been a wonderful help for the last several years with my project. I can really feel. I feel like I'm carpetbagging into a place where I'm not known, but I really feel the warmth in this room, and hopefully we'll connect over the next few minutes over our featured subject, William Stafford. I thought I brought a couple of poems. I was going to save one or two of these for after talking about the book, but I thought I'd start out. I found recently, and this is indicative of how my project has worked. I happen to know somebody who worked at Hallmark Cards for a very long time, who invited Bill Stafford to speak there and spend a day in 1991 workshopping with Hallmark writers and that sort of thing. And they kept up correspondence. They had actually met possibly the year before at the Centrum Writers Conference that Stafford went to over many years, and was really one of his favorite, as he says somewhere, one of his favorite writers' gatherings up there in up there in Washington. But anyway, so in their correspondence over a couple of years, one letter included a bunch of poems that Bill shared with her that he wrote at Centrum. This one, several of them have been published, collected and published. This one was published in a small journal, never been collected. The one I'll put off, I'm fairly certain has never been published. And so that might be a little treat that I'm dangling out there for you after I talk about the book a bit. Um, this is called, and this particular poem is called "Being Worthy at a Writers' Conference." It has something that doesn't get talked about enough, which is Bill's sense of humor. It's there. It's there. It's almost everywhere, but it's really not a great subject of critical attention when we talk about Stafford's work. But this one, I like, and again, I just this just came to my attention in the last several weeks. So here we go. Being worthy at a writers' conference. In my dorm room, with its crippled chair, fourth leg propped up on a Gideon Bible, my soap laid on a carefully folded towel says, quote, Marcel Chanté Facial Moisturizing Bar. Outside, a crow jeers at a, quote, live here Chamber of Commerce sign. My job, my eminent position, is to be eminent and talented and wise, to lecture on accomplishment and still not lose my balance if I can be humane some way. Look past labels, I tell them. It's soap, I say. Anyway, um, again, thank you so much for having me here. Unlike many of you, I think my direct experience with William Stafford. Hang on just a second. You know what? I told myself I would get a stopwatch going so I don't go over my appointed time. Um, anyway, my direct experience with Bill Stafford was somewhat limited. I met him briefly, as Amy mentioned, once or twice in the late 1980s when he came to Kansas City for a reading or two. I remember us both leaning against a long windowsill and chatting during which my uninformed small talk aimed to learn more about him than I knew at the time. A couple of years later, at the annual American Booksellers Association convention, now called Book Expo, I was on hand when Bill received the Western States Arts Foundation Award, which cited both his lifetime achievement and his forthcoming book at the time, My Name is William Tell. I love that book. It's, again, not as well discussed, not as well known as some of his other books. We were in a convention center in Anaheim, California, in the shadow of Disneyland. I was surprised as I sifted through Stafford's photo archives at the Lewis and Clark's Watsek Library to find two prints of Bill and me and two others schmoozing with plastic glasses of wine in hand. I still haven't decided whether including one of those pictures in my book would be too self-indulgent, but we'll see what my editor says. As book review editor of the Kansas City Star in those years, I never reviewed one of Bill's books, but a few days after he died, I recounted his life and career in a kind of eulogy for the newspaper. I'd forgotten about that until, again, I was scouring the record in the research phase of my book, and the piece bubbled up via newspapers.com. I was rather pleased to see that, in a way, it set the foundation for this biography project nearly 30 years before I took it up in earnest. Fast forward to early 2021, as we were emerging from the COVID shutdown and as I was in a quiet phase before the publication of my second book of literary biography, I began casting around for a potential subject of another book, and I'm not really sure how or why Bill Stafford's name landed on my list. But I poked around, discovered that no biography of him existed, save for Kim's memoir, of course, Early Morning, which was nearly 20 years old at the time. I wrote to Kim out of the blue, saying I was thinking about writing about his father. Kim wrote back almost immediately and unforgettably. His reply was, I'll never forget this, I've been waiting for your message for 28 years.
Wow.
I started talking with possible sources, and after an hour-long phone call with Naomi Shihab Nye, who I know many of you know and have heard from over the years, Naomi affirmed his enormous influence on younger poets and closed by saying, Steve, we need this book. I set out in an impulsively reckless act of forward motion and lunged, as Bill would say, into a river of research. And so here we are 5 years later. The manuscript is in the hands of Oregon State University Press, undergoing the sometimes awkward process of peer review. And if all goes well, we're hoping to see it in print in 2027. My working title has been The Shadow Poet, A Life of William Stafford, though I'm expecting my editor and the press will want to discuss alternatives. I've got some up my sleeve, but we'll see where it lands. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have about my journey toward this book. But first, I thought I would share one or two brief excerpts from the manuscript. In part, I hope to whet your appetite, and in part to share in this really important annual fellowship, which aims to keep Bill Stafford's spirit alive. I mentioned Naomi Nye, who you will eventually find is a recurring voice in the biography, and I'm eternally grateful for her encouragement and for providing a key quotation, which may well appear at the very beginning and near the end of the book. Everything has changed, she once said, not because Bill Stafford died, but because he lived. I just think that was pretty amazing. I'll just one more process anecdote. That year, 2021, I thought I would start my research not in Oregon, but at the Library of Congress, which it was just reopening after COVID. I felt as if it would be not easy, but it would be a good way to dive into a period of Bill's time that I could get my arms around, kind of at the beginning of this journey. As Perii, I think, was mentioned, as you know, Bill was a poetry consultant to the Library of Congress, and a job that later became known as Poet Laureate of the U.S. But I spent a week there doing research, gathering all the correspondence of his year from September 1970 to about May of 1971. Hundreds of pages of correspondence, some of which exists also at the Lewis and Clark archives, but also many recordings of his readings at the library and elsewhere, some video footage. Some of it struck me as rather rare and quite a surprise to encounter. Lots of photographs and just really a great amount of material. And I thought, I'd be able to, coming out of there, be able to write the Library of Congress chapter and feel like I've got my my energy going. As it turned out, I wrote 3 Library of Congress chapters. In the course of the last few years, I eventually whittled those down to 2 chapters, but they remain kind of the central focus of the book. There were a couple of laureate reunions that Bill attended that provide some not only humor but good fellowship among the major poets of the day. So anyway, I thought that I would share. And again, I'll just read one or two very brief excerpts from the book. One from the very beginning and one If we have time, maybe something from the middle, but more likely a brief one from the very end. This is chapter one. It's the beginning of the book. If you're ready for it. To the very end, William Stafford had the sound of his mother's voice in his head. On August 28, 1993, hours before he collapsed in his kitchen of a massive heart attack, Stafford climbed onto his writing sofa as he had done almost daily for half a century. In the dark and quiet of early morning, he scratched out in his bird pen strokes what turned out to be his last poem. Quote, "Are you Mr. William Stafford?" he began. Its origin was a phone call from an insurance salesman he'd received a couple of days earlier. His thoughts leapt far into the past, the sun on his skin, his mind's eye recreating once again the small Kansas town of his boyhood. "You can't tell when strange things with meaning will happen," he wrote. And then in his mind, his mother spoke up. "You don't have to prove anything," my mother said. "Just be ready for what God sends." I listened and put my hand out in the sun again. It was all easy. It was not uncommon for Stafford to invoke the presence of God, but he knew from where he came, and he didn't shy away from recognizing whatever we'd like to call a higher spirit. He knew quite possibly that he was dying, and he knew how much he owed to his mother's voice. More than once he credited that voice as the source of the sound of his poems, like the one he left on his draft writing paper that last day. "It seemed to me," he'd say, "that my mother talking is what I hear in my poems." When Studs Terkel once pressed him on the matter in a radio interview, "So she was the bard?" Stafford replied, "I think it would startle her to hear you say that, but in certain crucial ways, she was a bard. She couldn't help it. She got so much emotionally involved in gossiping, it turned into poetry." In one of Stafford's most enduring early poems, "The Farm on the Great Plains," the speaker's mother is no longer home, the place long gone, except in memory. She and everything else in those far off landscapes became the resonant, ghostly stuff of Stafford's poetry. Are you Mr. William Stafford? Who was he indeed? From his Kansas roots, William Stafford went on to become a prolific and prominent poet, though very much an unlikely poet who would occupy a quietly influential place along America's literary trail. He would be, as a contemporaneous writer Lewis Simpson once put it, quote, "a poet of the people in the deepest and most meaningful sense." His mother certainly helped to set his bearings as a man of the people, but his father offered considerable life-shaping guidance as well. And then there was the wind.
Wow, that's great. Yeah, I
As
know.
as biographers, we always hope that you might like our opening paragraphs, and it
Yeah.
might make you want to turn the page. So I hope you appreciate that. And for all I know, that'll remain the opening paragraphs. Let's hope. I did ask if there are if and maybe Amy can answer this. Do we want to leave time for some Q&A? Like I said, I'd be happy to answer some questions if there are any from the room. But why don't I read one other short passage? And again, this is from the very last chapter when I sort of sum up. I do a number of things in this last chapter after Bill dies. Try to assess his the period, how we remember him, and a few other things. But I also bring myself into the chapter in a way that you might identify with, and I was happy that Lois read Traveling Through the Dark, which makes an appearance in this little section here. This is from chapter 20. It's in the middle of the chapter, so one gray Saturday morning in Portland, I drove west toward the Oregon coast. My destination was Nescoin, a coastal village that I knew held significant emotional meaning for the Stafford family. On the way was the Tillamook State Forest and, most important, the Wilson River Road, the literal and unhidden setting of Stafford's most famous poem. Stafford traveled the road frequently in the early 1950s, commuting in a period when he took on extra teaching gigs for the Extension Service in Tillamook, Seaside, and Astoria. As I drove through it, the fall forest had numerous charms. There were scrims of fog in the air and drapes of snow on visible peaks. Several stretches of moss-covered skeletal trees were astoundingly mesmerizing, so much so I had to pull over and take pictures. As I drove the winding Oregon Highway 6, I kept looking for what I figured would be elusive, the spot where the speaker of Traveling Through the Dark finds a dead doe by the side of the road, and in the blood-red glow of his vehicle's taillights, rolls it down toward the river. O ye of little faith, I am certain the most logical, actual location was quite observable along a bend just a few miles east of the town of Tillamook. The river was visible and hard by the road in a way it never really appeared in the miles I'd already traveled. Then again, Stafford occasionally confessed that, well, really the site wasn't as close to the river as the poem lets on, and oh, he didn't actually push the doe over the edge. Oh well, so much for exactitude. Nevertheless, I'll take the moment for what it gave me. Save for an abundance of tree shade, it wasn't at all dark when I went traveling through. Yet despite the daylight, I remained devoted to the idea that in this landmark poem and many others, Stafford spoke, quote, for all of us. At Nescoin, the fall breezes, clouds, light fog, and chill provided a comforting welcome, given my own biographical roots on the other wind-braced coast, the rock-lined cold surf of the Atlantic Ocean off southern Maine. I wanted to sense the feelings that might have beset the Staffords in the rain-drenched aftermath of Brett's death and even later. And I will mention that one of the very late chapters I devote to Brett Stafford's suicide, an astounding period in the family's history, of course. After her father died, nearly 5 years after her brother, Kit Stafford took to the road to Nescoin and wept, quote, I went down to the beach myself one morning. The pearl sky, the fog, the foam, I couldn't see where land and sky met. I was crying and crying. How can I go on? What am I going to do? A wave came on, and there in the surf something came rolling down to my feet. It was an atlatl, or something like a little spear point. It was light gray. It was such a direct message, as if Daddy were saying, sorry, here I am. Excuse. Kit showed the totem to me when I visited her in Sisters. It was a pendant on a necklace. It's darkened. I wear it a lot, she said. Well, I didn't realize I'd have I'd have that kind of trouble getting through that. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed. And as I said, happy to talk more about the book. We've got a couple minutes for questions, I think, and happy to respond to just about anything. I will say over the last 4.5, 5 years, I've spent a couple of months in usually about 2 trips a year in Portland to the archives. Um, there's a famous saying by Robert Caro in My World of Biography that one must turn every page. I will confess I have not turned every page. There are 100,000 pages of correspondence in the archives. As you know, there are thousands and thousands of poems. I was startled to come across in one trip, I think last fall, a box that contained Bill's abandoned poems or wandering poems, poems that he'd sent out enough and never got picked up, and there were like 1,500 of them. I have not read all of those poems. There was plenty more for eager graduate students to dive into, and other writers, and so there's plenty to be done about Bill Stafford beyond what my book brings you, and I think it brings you things that you might not have seen before. Sylvia Plath makes a really interesting cameo appearance. There are other people who don't get written about who were influential in Bill's career, especially as it emerged in the 1960s. The whole idea of poetry circuits. You've heard him talk about. He lived to travel the roads and go out and speak at colleges. Those poetry circuits were the brainchild of a woman named Elizabeth Cray, who was at the Academy of American Poetry. Actually, before that, she was at the Poetry Center at the 92nd Street Y in New York, and there's a funny story in which she's trying to find William Stafford. Nobody knows how to get in touch with him, and she finally writes to Richard Hugo, "How do I find Bill Stafford?" Well, Betty Cray went a long way to kind of pointing spotlight on Bill Stafford. She invited him to New York for a reading. She invited him to participate in translation projects, and she helped plant the idea. She put him on the road in circuits around the country, which he ran with, and she was also very instrumental in the Poetry in the Schools movement in the 1960s, which, as a parallel, Bill got very much involved in his activities with the National Council of Teachers of English. Very active in that organization, and I don't think that part of Bill's career has ever really been discussed at any length. I go into it quite a bit in those middle years. So anyway, sorry, I keep yammering. Maybe there's still time for a question, maybe not. But but Amy, be my guide here. Tell me to get the hook if you need to.
Okay. Let's do one question. Here we have to take a little intermission, then we have an open mic, and then we have about a 15-minute video, and they will pretty much close the doors on us here at 9 o'clock.
Oh, I see. Gotcha. Yep.
Yeah, as we know from experience. Let's see. I see a hand over here with the dark cap. Would you like to ask a question?
Yes. Thank you for speaking to us this evening.
And Steve, can you hear this right now?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, I can. So, yep.
Yeah. Thank you for speaking to us this evening, and congratulations on the completion of your biography. I was wondering, just you spoke a little bit about Stafford's sense of humor. You covered along the way. I was just wondering, one of the potential hazards of a biographer who's working with a subject who is passed away is that they don't get a chance to interview their subject directly, and consequently, sometimes the subject can be a little bit elusive in the biography, in that you only see how other people view them or how they move through their career. I was just wondering how you wanted to reflect Stafford in your text, either how it affected you, as it obviously did, or how it came to you from the records.
Yeah, let me clarify that despite that last section where I do bring myself in, I am not in the book very much at all, and it's really about Stafford. And the book is based on his letters, on other people's testimony. To answer your question directly, and really even beginning with the topic of humor, there are numerous scores and scores of extant interviews with Bill. There's video where he's being interviewed. There are audio recordings. I alluded to this, to the Studs Terkel recording. That one was made in 1974. He was on Studs Terkel's show 2 more times over the next 15 years or so, and I've listened to all those recordings. There's a particular interview that's conducted in a car in Tampa, Florida, by some professors who have him and Dorothy in the car. They're going to a dinner. This was in early 1989, and the topic of humor comes up there, and it's really interesting. There's a great quote that I use from that interview in which Bill talks about how humor is not what he's after. But sometimes, as he's hopping around like a rabbit going between, through bushes and back, he'll take it. Again, it's the kind of thing that doesn't get talked about at all. And even he doesn't talk about it, except in that particular interview, he does. And I thought that was rather revealing. So, yeah, I'm not making this stuff up. And the plight of every biographer is that, every biography is not a complete document. Of course, we make choices about what we include, and there are always going to be gaps. And if anyone in the room here sets out to write a biography of Bill Stafford, it would be far different than mine. Just because our sensibilities are the things we perceive, the things we want to focus on. But Bill's voice is all over my book from his correspondence, which is deep, from his writings, his personal writings, his memoiristic writings in some of his collected essays, and as well as in numerous interviews, a lot of which Vince and Patty saved and recorded or have archived for the library, and so great. There's great stuff there that preserves his voice.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mentioned that I had an unpublished poem. Can I read that before we move on?
Sure.
Amy, you okay with that?
Wrap it with that.
Yeah, wrap it with this. It's not a long poem, 2 stanzas. It's called A Meditation. And Vince will perk up and go, well, that poem has been published, but it's not. There were 3 other poems called A Meditation or Meditation, and it's not this. This one is completely different. It's written from Centrum, July 18th, 1990, A Meditation. These trees have invested so much in their part of the land that it hurts us to take it. And for years deep there in the soil, we come upon remnants, little grasping roots, clutching their loved particles of plain old rock and the mulch of ancestors who came to this country when it still smoked from creation. I turn my eyes away. I try not to smell that imploring cut in a cedar, and when a chainsaw shrieks its battle cry, we know how soon the air will shudder news of the massacre. Walk into a grove. Your shadow melts into the rich chocolate kingdom of giant shadow. Great realms of worship your arms can't sustain will arch for you, and a breath more steeped in veneration than we can give will touch along through alcoves that open and bow and pass. We only borrow our world, draw its air in, give it back, touch a tree, wonder, and go on. Thank you all so much. And thank you, Bill.
Thank you so much, Steve, for zooming in here, and good luck on Sunday at your next gig. Okay. So it is time for our intermission. Let's zip through like a 10-minute, a real quickie one here. The restrooms are out this hallway and to the left, if you'd like to do that, and I'll see you back here in 10 minutes for the open mic. Everybody, let's get going on the open mic here.
Anyway, good to see you. Good seeing
Oh dear.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, could everybody take a seat, please? Thank you. All right, first up on the open mic is a name that I cannot read. Does anybody remember if they were the first one who signed up? Oh, and what is your name?
Oh, Annie Drager.
Drager. Okay, come on up, Annie. You're first.
Well, I have to tell on my friend because she signed me up.
Okay, there you go.
She signed me up, so. But anyway, I love William Stafford and I just kind of opened the book and I'm going to read a poem that kind of relates to a little bit of my background. It's called American Gothic. And it's the next chapter after the Indians, you know. If we see better through tiny grim glasses, we like to wear tiny grim glasses. Our parents willed us this view. It's tundra. We love it. We travel our kind of renaissance, barnfuls of hay, whole voyages of corn, and a book that flickers its halo in the parlor. Poverty plus confidence equals pioneers. We never doubted. Poverty plus confidence.
Thank you, Annie. Our next reader is Susan Maley. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I thought I'd be reading among you, not to you. But the first thing I was going to read.
Susan, would you scoot over by the mic? Thank you.
Not too close, but you're. We'll see.
Is this perfect?
That's good.
As close as you can get to being human and perfect. And so I had thought I would read a poem we all love so much, a ritual to read to each other. But that's so much a hymn of his that we could probably all sing it together. And so perhaps somebody will read it later and I'll get to hear it. But being here among poets and lovers of poetry, it struck me that something that seemed quite apt was when I met my muse. I glanced at her and took my glasses off. They were still singing. They buzzed like a locust on the coffee table and then ceased. Her voice belled forth and the sunlight bent. I felt the ceiling arch and knew that nails up there took a new grip on whatever they touched. I am your own way of looking at things, she said. When you allow me to live with you, every glance at the world around you will be a sort of salvation. And I took her hand.
Thank you, Susan. Okay. Technical adjustment.
Yeah.
Now you can see us. It's magic. Our next reader is going to be Steve Diefenbacher.
Going to be brief. Amy did mention that we've had a rough week, and I thought this would be an appropriate poem to read as a result of that. And it's also has to do with William Stafford's pacifism. Objector. In line at lunch, I cross my fork and spoon to ward off complicity, the ordered life our leaders have offered us. Thin as a knife, our chance to live depends on such a sign, while others talk and the Pentagon from the moon is bouncing exact commands. Forget your faith. Be ready for whatever it takes to win. We face annihilation unless all citizens get in line. I bow and cross my fork and spoon. Somewhere other citizens more fearfully bow in a place terrorized by their kind of oppressive state. Our signs both mean you hostages over there will never be slaughtered by my act. Our vows cross never to kill and call it fate.
Thanks, Steve. Next up is Peter Yeager.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you all. When I was choosing what to read tonight, I made some selections from William Stafford's last year, and I chose 4. And then I decided, because I thought, someone else would read one of these, right? So I got to make sure I have options, right? And then I decided on 2 backups. But as it turned out, nobody read my first choice, which was Retirement, written in January 20th of 1993. And I actually serendipitously met William Stafford in 1993. And I just wanted to first say one sentence from Naomi Nye. There was in William Stafford a vast and necessary oxygen. Retirement. After that knife blade, we breathed a film on it like a mirror and looked up. Our children were gone. And in their place, a vacant road continued into a storm. That's when I think we began to know how the rest would be. The soft, careful sound of little worlds falling. Those flakes, every one, hit the windshield with a glad sacrifice and then never existed. You could look back and imagine a lifetime of snowflake incidents again, but this time you could hope with religion or some kind of thicker coat on. For certain young readers, you don't have to understand this. Pretend that you don't understand. Go back to your inhale, exhale existence. Don't look up now. There will be time.
Thank you, Peter. Next reader is going to be Pepper Trail.
Yeah. Well, of all the things I learned tonight, I think the most charming one is that William Stafford spoke at a Hallmark card convention. And as we all know, he was a plain-spoken man, a master of the aphorism, and if fate had gone in a different direction, we might all be receiving William Stafford cards for our birthday. The poem that I'm going to read is Looking for Someone. Many a time driving over the coast range, down the cool side, hemlock, spruce, then shore pine, I've known something I should have said one time. If we hadn't met, then everything would have to change. We were judged. Our shadows knew our height, and after dark, exact, the air confirmed all with its move or stillness. We both were trapped in an odd-shaped island. Sleet persuades a traveler. I, all night, knew no one under the earth escape, even when the sky goes back remote. Walking till the stars forget, I look out and watch the smoke at Astoria and Seaside, cringing along the coast, and barefoot gulls designing the sand. Go flat, the waves, the little boat, the mild riding light. The sand goes going democratic, trading places down the wind, everything distancing away. Finding this took all this time, and you're not even here. Though we met, everything had to change.
Thanks, Pepper. Next up is Seth Kaplan.
Well, like Steve, I've been kind of looking through, trying to make it through this period of time. And fortunately, there's lots to choose from. And for tonight, I picked the one called Learning.
Library will be closing in 15 minutes. Check out or return purchases. Circulation desk.
Fortunately, this is short. A piccolo played, then a drum. Feet began to come a part of the music. Here came a horse, clippity clop away. My mother said, "Don't run. The army is after someone other than us. If you stay, you'll learn our enemy." Then he came, the speaker. He stood in the square. He told us who to hate. I watched my mother's face. "It's quiet. That's him," she said. All right.
Thanks, Seth. Next up is Dan Kaufman.
Like many of us, I've been trying to balance the need to keep up with the news with the need to disengage from the news. And I think this poem speaks to the latter. This is Stafford's Any Morning. Just lying on the couch and being happy, only humming a little, the quiet sound in the head. Trouble is busy elsewhere at the moment. It has so much to do in the world. People who might judge are mostly asleep. They can't monitor you all the time, and sometimes they forget. When dawn flows over the hedge, you can get up and act busy. Little corners like this, pieces of heaven left lying around, can be picked up and saved. People won't even see that you have them. They're so light and easy to hide. Later in the day, you can act like the others. You can shake your head. You can frown.
Thanks, Dan. Our next reader is Haley Peterson. This is my first annual Stafford reading without my grandma, Joan Peterson. And I'm so touched that today's event was held in her honor. And I'm going to take some liberties and read one of Joan's poems. This is called Ascension. Canada geese circle the pond, singing their melodic chords. They quarrel with each other and vie for territory. Like fountains rising and falling on their way to somewhere, across creeks and rivers, above mountains and through forests, I see wings in migration. Here on earth, I hang out the wash and think about death. White sheets billow into sails. My feet leave the ground. My hair blows around my face. My blue dress spills with the wind. I am flying. I could follow these geese on their wild adventure. This is my passion. Have I too turned from this world into clouds or hills or the surging sea? Imagine islands in paradise, how they bloom. They wait all day for the wandering tattler or the melodious laughing thrush to touch them. And the ferry turns. Whenever there's a fuss, they just rise and sail away. Thank you, Haley. I'm so glad you could be here tonight. Our next reader is, excuse me, I'm going to get this wrong, Gary Schrott? Schrott.
So staying with the opening theme and probably the theme for all of us this week, I'm going to read verse 2 and 3 from a poem called People of the South Wind. And maybe it's a little warning that justice comes around. Your breath has a little shape. You can see it cold days. Well, every day is like that, even in summer. Well, your breath goes, a whole army of little shapes. They are living in the woods now and are your friends. And when you die, well, you go with them. Your last breath and find the others. And in open places in the woods, all you are together and happy. Sometimes if a man is evil, his breath runs away and hides from him. When he dies, his last breath cannot find the others, and he never comes together again. Those little breaths, in the autumn, they scurry the bushes before snow, and they never come back.
Thanks, Gary. Our next and second to last reader is David Hoffman.
Thank you, Amy. Thank you, Vince. Thank you, poets. Ask Me by William Stafford. Sometime when the river is ice, ask me mistakes I have made. Ask me whether what I have done is my life. Others have come in their slow way into my thought, and some have tried to help or to hurt. Ask me what difference their strongest love or hate has made. I will listen to what you say. You and I can turn and look at the silent river and wait. We know the current is there, hidden, and there are comings and goings from miles away that hold the stillness exactly before us. What the river says, that is what I say. Thank you.
Thanks, David. Our last reader is Daniel Ulrich.
Thank you. I thought I'd just note that several people have alluded to some of the difficult events of this week, and I'd note that the woman who was shot yesterday was a published poet. So the poem I'm going to read is A Farewell, Age 10. Well, its owner looks away. I touched a rabbit. Its long, soft ears fold back under my hand. Miles of yellow wheat bend. Their leaves rustle away and wait for the sun and wind. This day belongs to my uncle. This is his farm. We have stopped on our journey. When my father says we will go on, leaving this paradise, leaving the family place, we have my father's job. Like him, I will be strong all of my life. We are men. If we squint our eyes in the sun, we will see far. I'm ready. It's good, this resolve. But I will never pet the rabbit again.
Thanks, everyone. So Emily, what do you think? If we start the video now, do we really need to get out of here at 9? Is that right?
Yeah.
If they come, it's
the video?
it's about 50. Well, we could.
It's whenever people have to leave is when it ends.
So it's Stafford reading a few poems, and we
Yeah, he
could.
reads for about 15 minutes, but people can leave.
Yeah.
Can leave in the middle of it. And
Okay.
About the people that work at the library.
Yes.
Having to remain.
Oh, we will not do it. We will not do that.
They won't. No. It'll be me.
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah.
So the video is going to play us out. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Stick around and watch a little bit if you'd like to. It's a great night. Thanks, everyone.
thank you. I'm just gonna say that, go ahead.
And
That he's reading in El Dorado, Kansas at Butler Community College, where he went to school in 1935. So this reading's in 1986.
Things I learned last week, this is called. Ants, when they meet each other, usually pass on the right. Sometimes you can open a sticky door with your elbow. A man in Boston has dedicated himself to telling about injustice. For $3,000, he will come to your town and tell you about it. Schopenhauer was a pessimist, but he played the flute. Yeats, Pound, and Eliot saw art as growing from other art. They studied that. If I ever die, I'd like it to be in the evening. That way I'll have all the dark to go with me, and no one will see how I begin to hobble along. In the Pentagon, one person's job is to take pins out of towns, hills, and fields, and then save the pins for later. You see, if you hold your head a certain way, these things begin to come to you. There are a lot of others. There are many others. Well, I have these on the right size sheets, but I was somewhere and Hyatt Hotels, Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And someone in authority told me to put a certain poem into the program, and I didn't have it with me, so I dredged it back, I think, from memory. And I want to bring it back to my hometown. It's called Religion Back Home. This has 4 parts, but they're really short. The minister smoked, and he drank, and there was that woman in the choir. But what really finished him, he wore spats. Part 2 of Religion Back Home. When God's parachute failed, along about the spring of 1945, the sky in Kansas jerked open, and we all sailed easily into this new strange harness on the stars. Part 3 is a short review of Samson Agonistes, written for Miss Arrington's class in Liberal High School. Our Father who art in heaven can lick their Father who art in heaven. The last part of Religion Back Home. When my little brother chanted, in 1492 Jesus crossed the ocean blue, Mother said, Bob, you mean Columbus crossed the ocean blue? And he said, I always did get them 2 guys mixed up. Well, you know how it is around here in the hometown. I've lost the title of the poem that I have here. I didn't know it when I typed it out, and I still don't know it. It's love the earth like a mole, fur near. Near-sighted, hold the precious clods, their fine print headlines, pat them with soft hands. But spades, pink and loving, they break rock, nudge giants aside, affable plow. Fields are to touch, each day nuzzle your way, tomorrow the world. I guess I could call this folklore or local history or staying local. Where it's at. Bess. Ours are the streets where Bess first met her cancer. She went to work every day past the secure houses. At her job in the library, she arranged better and better flowers. And when students asked for books, her hand went out to help. In the last year of her life, she had to keep her friends from knowing how happy they were. She listened while they complained about food or work or the weather. And the great national events danced their grotesque, fake importance. Always, pain moved where she moved. She walked ahead. It came. She hid. It found her. No one ever served another so truly. No enemy ever meant so strong a hate. It was almost as if there was no room left for her on earth. But she remembered where joy used to live. She straightened its flowers. She did not weep when she passed its houses. And when finally she pulled into a tiny corner and slipped from pain, her hand opened again, and the streets opened, and she wished all well. When I was reading this, I realized many of my poems could be local history, folklore. And I like to be able, in something I write, to do something like saying, the great national events danced their grotesque, fake importance. I mean, if you want to know where it is, when something's really important, It's not something out there, it's something here. Well, that makes me think that in writing, it sometimes seems to me a poem is a document you start to write, and you are led to supply contexts for things you have always wanted to say, even if you didn't know you wanted to say them. You find out you've always wanted to say them, and here's where they belong, just from this letting it go forward kind of process. That process is interesting to me. Sometime when the river is ice, ask me mistakes I've made. Ask me whether what I've done is my life. Others have come their slow way into my thought, and some have tried to help or to hurt. Ask me what difference their strongest love or hate has made. I will listen to what you say. You and I can turn and look at the silent river and wait. We know the current is there, hidden, and there are comings and goings from miles away that hold the stillness exactly before us. What the river says, that is what I say. I was looking at that because of a feeling of sort of strangeness about it. And again, it seemed, I'm glad I get this insight while I'm on the program. But it seems many of these things are an identifying of intense local things. And you can do poems, honor the charge they made, Noble 600, and so on. You can do those. Or you could do those. Maybe you can't do those anymore, come to think of it. But there are things you can do. And maybe we can find our way back by validating the things that we really feel, that we really know. Well, I have here before me something I didn't write, but something I've carried with me for years because it's, for me, it's the way to do it. It's an exemplification of what I've been talking about. This is what our daughter Kit said when she was 6 years old. We'd been down the Oregon coast, the family, hiking around all day. Everybody's tired, time to go home. We have to drive over the coast range. So Kit, 6 years old, stood by the dashboard to help Daddy drive. That is, she's going to talk to me and keep me awake. So she began to imagine a way of life for the two of us, and this is what she said. We'd have an old car, the kind that gets flat tires, but inside would be wolfskin on the seats, and warm fur on the steering wheel, and wolf fur on all the buttons. And we'd live in a ranch house made out of logs with a loft where you sleep, and you'd walk a little ways and there'd be the barn with the horses. We'd drive to town, and we'd have flat tires and be sort of old. Well, I don't want to dwell on this very long, but it just struck me as that's the way to do it. You know, you're in a situation of trust, talking to someone you know. You're not competing with anyone. You're just finding your way forward by what occurs to you. And she can be psychoanalyzed for all that wolf fur inside the car. I know that. You know, but whatever occurred to her, she said. And there are a lot of little touches, you know. I'm going to go on from this, but little things that a lot of it we would have to learn mechanically if we didn't do it naturally the way a fish swims, to say. And there'd be the barn with the horses, you know. It's not a barn. It's the one we already know about, you know, one of those tricks that gets you inside the poem and moving. And somebody that doesn't have to say it's already on the way. Well, this seems to be more related than it is, but I want to read with Kit, age 7, at the beach, and make it be a ratcheting forward of little elements, each of which invites the next one. You know, the way the process is, I think. With Kit, age 7, at the beach. We were going to the highest dune, from there to gaze and come down. The ocean was performing. We contributed our climb. Out of the storm, those waves leapfrogged forward and came. What should our trip mean? Kit waited for me to decide. Faced with that kind of world, what would you tell your child? That was an absolute vista. The froth blew far and cold. I knew Kit was afraid the way she held onto my hand. How far could you swim, Daddy, in such a storm? As far as was needed, I said. And as I talked, I swam. I've made a succession of things here I've sort of thrown aside. And partly because there are certain things I want to get to, partly because I know I'm getting hungry too. But if I aim ahead like 1, 2, 3, just say 4. I should put in, they have physicians for social responsibility and other groups. What are we writers doing? I'm going to put this in. Ground zero. A bomb photographed me on the stone on a white wall. A burned outline where the bomb rays found me out in the open and ended me, person and shadow, never to cast a shadow again, but be here so light the sun doesn't know. People on Main Street used to stand in their certain chosen places. I walk around them. It wouldn't be right if I stood there. But all of their shadows are mine now. I am so white on the stone. Two ending poems. So Long is the next to the last. At least at night, a street light is better than a star. And better good shoes on a long walk than a good friend. Often in winter, with my old cap, I slip away into the gloom like a happy fish, at home with all I touch at the level of love. No one can surface till far, far on, and all that we'll have to love may be what's near in the cold, even then. Well, just in order to get fast at something, I'll say, my wife said, Bill, that poem of yours, So Long. She saw it in some magazine somewhere. She said, that isn't right to say better good shoes on a long walk than a good friend. You know, she's a nice person, but she's not a writer. This is what I want to say. She's a nice person, and she has the national interest at heart. You know, we're supposed to say better a good friend. So I said a strange, probably brutal thing, which I didn't mean to be brutal. I said, just walk a little farther and see what you think. Well, we're in that kind of world, you know, and as writers, we can at least glance at them now and then. But later we can meet each other and say, I don't know what I could do without you. And we scuff our good shoes and we know, well, we may go on. We may go on. Okay, the last one. Leaving a writers' conference, but not quite yet. We have lunch. Leaving a writers' conference. When we all leave here tomorrow, some will be glad, some sorry. It will be homeward for some, but for some it will be long till anything lasts again. 2 weeks, a week, a day, and you turn around and it's gone. But that's part of the contract, you know. I don't care, do you? Listen, if it was okay this time, the world can surprise us again. And we're all going somewhere, nobody knows how far, circling what's never quite said. I say it's all right. So long.